Hello, viewers. You're welcome to another session of Broken Not Shattered, and it's your boy OBG. Well, I am covering today for Ike. He's going to be joining us back very soon. And with that, I say thank you for staying with us. I know week in, week out. For those who like, subscribe, and comment, we want to thank you so much. And for those who are joining us for the first time, this is Broken Not Shattered. We're on Instagram, on Facebook, TikTok, and Spotify. And you can do well to follow us on all these platforms and then share to your family and friends to also join us in this conversation. Thank you once again for joining us. Today with me in the studio is Cody. Cody is a survivor. And I'm going to give Cody the opportunity to, introduce himself the way he would want the audience to get to know him. Cody, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Obi. Hi, everyone. My name is Cody Bryant. I live in Hermosa Beach, California, and I'm 36 years old. And so the reason Obi brought me onto this show is 3 years ago, I was traveling in Spain on vacation with two friends, and we were riding rental mopeds around to get around. And one morning, I was hit by a taxi driver, head-on collision, and I was wearing a helmet, thankfully, but I was thrown off the bike. I shattered my femur on the way up as I hit the handlebars on the way up, and then I landed on the ground on my head, and the impact shook my brain and my skull so hard that I had 3 traumatic brain injuries, and I was knocked immediately into a coma. They managed to save my life. They got me to the ICU in time, gave me blood transfusions, put me on a ventilator, and saved my life. But they didn't think I was going to live for long. And my mother flew to Spain when she found out about it, and I was in the coma for 5 days. And then I woke up. But they told my mother that even though I woke up, it was unlikely I would have any cognitive recovery. They thought I was going to be vegetative the rest of my life. But I eventually was able to communicate by blinking my eyes. My mom would ask me questions, and I would blink yes or no with 2 blinks. And as days went by, I kept regaining abilities. I got to the point where I could finally speak many days later, and my voice was very raspy from the ventilator, and I was not very cognitively sound. I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't know why I was in the hospital. I didn't know where I was or why my mom was there. I was very confused. And I have no memory of any of this. So this is all, I know this all from stories being told to me. But so I was in Spain in the ICU for 4 weeks. They were able to stabilize me to the point that they did femur surgery. So my femur now is a titanium rod and pin, and that was a successful surgery. And then when they determined I was fit to fly on a medical jet, they put me on a medical jet and to fly me back to the United States. But I had some type of seizure. I was delirious, and we had to land in Istanbul, Turkey. And so then I landed in Turkey, and they had to rush me to the ICU there. And then I was stuck in Turkey for 2 weeks until they could stabilize me. Then there was also a miscommunication with the doctor. This is a whole crazy story, but they didn't understand what had happened to me, so they didn't really give me good care and didn't say I was fit to fly home. So my friend flew to Turkey to basically threaten the doctors to let me leave because they wouldn't sign the papers. And it worked. He got me out of the country. And so then a month and a half after my accident, I landed back in the United States. And then at that point, I checked into a neurological rehab. And I was in that rehab for 2 months. And that rehab, I had to learn how to talk again, I had to walk again. I was totally paralyzed on one side of my body. I had no movement at all. And you can kind of see the scar from the face mask on here. And I was missing teeth. So I was in pretty rough shape. I had lost 40 pounds. I was very skinny, frail. And so I was in a wheelchair. And then in rehab, they were teaching me cognitive abilities, like trying to work on my memory and my ability to process like directions and kind of tell me what had happened. I didn't understand really what had happened until a month into rehab, because my mom was there and I kept asking her, I'm like, Mom, what am I doing at this place? She's like, Cody, you got in a bad accident. I was like, I know I got in a bad accident, Mom. People break their legs all the time. She's like, Cody, you have a brain injury. And then I would just change the subject. I would like ignore. I didn't comprehend, or I didn't process that I had a brain injury. She would tell me to hand her a cup, and I'd hand it with my functional side. And she'd be like, no, hand it to me with the other side. And then she said I would look at it, and then just my eyes would kind of go around, and then I'd change the subject. I'd be like, oh, tomorrow. Like I wouldn't acknowledge that I was paralyzed on one side of my body. But after a month and a half of rehab, I finally was able to move. They needed my bed in rehab, so I went to a hotel that was handicap accessible because I was still in a wheelchair. My house has a lot of stairs, so I had to work on stairs a bunch until I could do them to get moved back home. Then, so over 2 months after my accident, I was able to move back home. And then I started going to physical therapy 5 days a week for a year and a half to get back all my function on my left side. So it's been a full-time job. And now I don't have complete function, but I walk very well. You can't really tell. My hand, they said I would never use this hand again. It was stuck like this for months. And they wanted to do surgery on it to replace the tendons because they said I'll never be able to open the hand again. But I can open it. It's not great, but I can get there kind of. And it's been so much work. I've never worked harder than anything in my life on this to get back my function. I used to be very athletic, and so I want to like play soccer again. I want to surf again. So I've been working harder than anything I've ever done, and I'm getting there. That's mainly my story.
Wow, this is quite an interesting story, and it's mind-blowing, Cody. You know what? For listeners, meeting you for the first time, who was Cody before the accident, and what was that gave you joy and fueled your adventurous spirit?
Interesting question. There are some things I was proud of and some things I'm not. So I'll tell you both. I was very happy. I was seeking a lot of fun. Like that was my main focus, was how much fun can I have? But I also was always making sure everyone around me was having a good time too. I was very active. I did a lot of traveling. I would go around the world and I would hike big mountains. I taught scuba diving in Australia for a while. So I really liked to travel and do outdoor activities. I also, this is a part I'm not super proud of, but I did like to party. So I was kind of a party boy. But after this accident, the things I love and the things that mean a lot to me have changed. I was always a family guy prior, and I loved my friends. I was very close to all my friends and family. But now that I've had this near-death experience, I want a family of my own. And before I was kind of just like free-spirited, always traveling around. And now I want to like create something stable where I can actually spend. I used to seek really like epic moments, like a lot of thrill. And now I want the little moments with the people I love more. So it kind of, once you lose all your physical abilities and you almost lose your life, it makes you put things in a different perspective. And I see now that the important things are the relationships with the people I love.
Wow. So, well, still on the accident and recovery. You were in coma, and then the doctor told your family that you were not going to walk again. And then you woke up. What was the hardest part of facing that reality when you woke up?
So one thing that makes this complicated is I don't remember an entire year. An entire year of my memory was cleared, starting probably like around 9 months before my accident up to 3 months after my accident. I have no memory. I don't remember the accident. I don't remember waking up from the coma, anything like that. The first memories I have were really in rehab in the United States. And and they were very like scattered. And I didn't really comprehend what had happened because I just thought I had a broken leg. I didn't understand the brain injury. So then about a month into rehab is when I really understood how bad my injury was. That's when I finally comprehended that like this is a lifelong disability and that I will never be the same person I was. And so that moment was a dark moment. I don't know how open to be here. I was in a dark depression for a while because I was like, I'm never going to have my athletic abilities again. I'm never going to have my cognitive abilities. Like I had slow processing speed. I couldn't comprehend things or make big decisions for a lot of like, I just wasn't this, I didn't have the same brain. Part of brain injury is your personality also changes. And because it messes, my injury was a diffuse axonal injury, they call it. So the whiplash was so hard that it shook my brain so hard that the axons, the neurons ripped apart. So it's like totally changed everything. Thankfully, I still have the bulk of my personality from when I was young, like being raised as a kid by my parents. But the years prior to my accident, like I don't have clear memory of that, and kind of however I changed during that time is different now. So that took me a long time to comprehend, and for a while I was really determined to be the same person. So I was like, this kind of sounds funny to say, but I was like reading all my text messages, all my social media posts. I was watching videos of myself because I was trying to recreate who I used to be. But eventually that became a lot of work and I couldn't do it anyway. So I was like, maybe I should just be this new person. And that's what I've done. And now I like this new person and it's worked out better. But that was a hard thing to do.
You make it look so interesting and make the whole story, look so easy. I would say you're quite a replica of, or an example of what do not look like what we've been through. Now, but still on that issue, what will you say is the role your family played, especially your sister Rachel, played in your survival and journey of recovery?
Man, I would be nowhere without my family. They have been my heroes. My mom flew to Spain. She's a preschool teacher and she left her class. Thankfully, she had some really good friends that really helped take care of her preschool class while she was gone because they wanted her to, take care of her firstborn son. And then she flew with me all through the Turkey experience, all back to the United States. And she stayed in rehab with me for the whole time. My sister left her job and also stayed with me in rehab. And when I was in Spain, she drove across the country to North Carolina, where I'm from, because I live in California. She drove cross country to take her dog and be with my dad. My dad is disabled, so he couldn't come to Spain. So my sister wanted to be with him to comfort each other. And then once I got back to the United States, my sister flew back to California to be in rehab with me. And my mom and sister stayed on the rehab campus, and they would come to my room every morning, first thing when they woke up. And during rehab, I would wake up scared all the time. I didn't understand what had happened. And my sister would just come and check on me and take care of me. And I mean, they had to do some very difficult things. Like this is embarrassing, but I was incontinent. Like I couldn't use the bathroom by myself. I didn't know sometimes where I was. And they would have to like help me come back to myself. And then I would get like irritable all of a sudden. And brain injury can make you like grumpy. And so I was not always the nicest person during that time. And my sister Rachel would come with me every day. I had physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. And she would go with me every day to each of those things to help me out and give me support. And then also to take notes. So when I got back to my hospital room, she could help me do my homework, basically do more physical therapy. And I would get so frustrated because I was so exhausted, but she knew that I wanted to get back to who I used to be. So she was like, I'm going to push him. And man, if I didn't have her, I would probably still be in a wheelchair. She and my mom are my superheroes. And my dad would be there if he could have been, but and he came to visit me in California eventually. But he also gives me motivation because he deals with something similar. He has a motor neuron disease, and he's in a wheelchair. So now he and I have this bond that we didn't have prior. Like I understand more of what he goes through, and I have so much more respect because it is a incredible battle. Like it is the hardest thing I've ever experienced, and he deals with that every day. But yeah, my family and the network of my friends have taken me. I mean, they've taken such good care of me and kept me motivated when times have gotten so tough and dark. So I'm so thankful for them.
So this is a clear saying of family became everything to you. Of COVID, now we're going to go on a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be looking at mindset and resilience. Just a quick break, a 10-second break, and we're back. You're welcome back again on another session of Broken Not Shattered. If you're joining us for the first time, this is BNS, where we tell our stories just to bring healings to life. We're on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Spotify. Do well to subscribe, comment, like, and follow us on all our social media platforms. Today is your boy OBG covering for I, and in the studio we have Cody, who is a very resilient survivor. Cody, before we left for the short break, we looked at the accident and the early recovery, and now we're going to look at the mindset and resilience. Now, sometimes or in most cases, people see you know recovery to be purely a physical thing, but not knowing that beneath it there is the memory loss, brain trauma, and emotional shift. And what will you say is your hardest unseen battle in that situation?
So one really difficult thing of brain injury is a lot of the injury is invisible. And so like now, because I lost all my health, I've been so focused on health, and I live like a perfectly healthy lifestyle now. And so I look good, I look healthy, and people think like, oh, Cody's back to normal or even better. But they don't see what's going on inside. They don't see the psychological things, the emotional things, the cognitive things, the memory. So it's tough because it feels isolating because people like treat me like I'm normal, which I like. I'm glad they treat me like I'm normal, but it almost feels like there's no validation for what I'm dealing with. So a thing I did for a lot was I go to support groups for other people that have brain injuries, and that was very helpful because you feel like almost you get in your head where you're like, am I making this up? Like, but when you talk to other people dealing with the same thing, you know that it's real and that it's validating and that you get comfort from that. And I've also realized through my social media, I made a social media account about my recovery and have connected to so many survivors and their family members and healthcare professionals. And this is a very common thing, because brain injury, strokes are a brain injury too, and that's a very common injury. And that community doesn't feel like they have a voice, and they don't feel understood by society because so much of it is invisible. And so I made this social media account to try to help fill that void, to be that voice for those people, because I look like I'm healthy. So I hope when people see me looking healthy but still explaining all the difficulties I'm having cognitively and emotionally, they will hopefully translate that to all the other people in that community and see that it's not just something you can see. It's not just like a broken leg, and it's something that we have to work on constantly. Like, this is a lifelong battle. I will always have to improve my brain and to try to be as functional as I want to be.
So Cody, I want to say this. You stayed so strong even when people, could have easily given up on you. And I want to move a little to maybe identity and redefining self. But before I get into that, it will be quite, interesting to know what was that kept you pushing, for days that you would have easily given up. What was that kept you pushing?
There's so many things. Of course, like Well, so in the early days, I didn't really comprehend what had happened, like for the first couple months, and I thought like it was just basically like this is what I do. Like I'm in this hospital, and they're making me do all these physical therapies and stuff. I just have to do it. But then once I finally understood what had happened and how much work this was going to be, I kind of thought I was like, some people get injured badly and don't have the option to get any better. And my situation, I actually can get better by working hard. So I don't want to like waste that opportunity when I'm so fortunate to have it. So I was like, I have to do this. And also, my family has been through so much, and I saw how like devastating it was for them. And like I've always been a very like independent person and helpful to my family. And then now I was the one receiving all the help, and that was a shift in dynamic that I was so thankful for. But I wanted to be back to the point that I can give help for my family, and so that was a big thing too. I also like there's some existential stuff with like purpose in life. I realized that by having this ability to continue getting better, I could inspire other people to be able to do the same thing, because so much of this battle has been mental, because it is so discouraging. Every few steps forward, you take a step backward. And I just like, I think having an example of someone that has gone from the bottom to back up to being good is an inspiring thing, that I could share this story to be able to help people. And that, I mean, that's why I'm here with you, Obi, because I want to be able to share this to give people hope that there is hope and there is reason to get better. And even if your life doesn't go as you want it to go, because it never does, like everyone has things in their life that shift, but you can still make good come of it. And that's what I want to do. So my life path is totally different than what I expected, but I'm thankful for this path now, because it's connected me to so many people I never would have met otherwise. And I have empathy like I've never had. I understand people's dilemmas a lot more than I ever could have. And now my default assumption, instead of like getting annoyed with people when someone does something I don't like, I think I'm like, maybe they're going through something that I can't see, that I don't know about. And so I give them grace. And that's my default now. And so I'm thankful for that. And I want to share that with people.
Interesting, Cody. Now, so it's important that we look at, or we reflect on identity and redefine itself, And on that note, there's something you always say that life will never look at you the same way, as you were before. Like life can never look exactly same as before, right? How have you worked on accepting the new Cody?
That one's tough. The people I'm closest, so like people that were kind of just casual friends that I wouldn't see very regularly, they don't really see much of a difference. Besides, like some of my interests change. Like I don't party anymore. I don't go to concerts as much anymore. I don't travel as much anymore. But they don't, like when they speak with me, they don't see too much difference. But then my closest friends and family do see the difference. But they've done a really good job of like making me feel good about the changes that I've made, and they see the good in me, and they kind of validate these changes and tell me that they like these changes. And so that has really helped me. And also, like when I was trying to be the old Cody, I recognized that it was kind of an impossible task. And so I was just using all this energy on something that wasn't, it almost felt selfish, because no one else needed me to be who I was. It was like me, I wanted to be that person. But then when I got over that, I realized I could lean into being this new person, and people like this new person. And I have purpose now that is more meaningful than I ever had before. So it became a good thing for me to lean into being this good person, this new person. And my sister always, when I talk about this, she always corrects me. She's like, don't talk badly about who you used to be. She's like, you were great before. So I do have to, that's my disclaimer there. But she's like, I do like your new gentleness and empathetic side that's come out in all this.
And that's interesting. But let's move ahead. Let's reflect. Let's cast our mind on reflection and hope. Looking back, what would you say, has surprised you most about, yourself through this journey? What would you say has surprised you the most in all of this journey?
I think before I used to be a very like instant satisfaction person. I used to want results from things instantly. So I was kind of impatient. And this recovery, I mean, I'm 3 years in and I'm still focusing on recovery. That's still my number one focus in life. And I don't think I ever would have expected me to have the tenacity and patience to work on something that's such a long term thing. So I'm surprised by that, but also very happy that I'm pushing that hard for that long. Because I knew I had like the grit to push hard, but to do it for this long without like seeing instant results or getting to where my goal was within like a short amount of time, it's been really cool to see that, and surprising to see that my goal is so far away, yet I'm still fighting hard every day. Another little thing, um, I also was not certain that I wanted kids, and now I want kids, which is it's kind of like when your life flashes in front of you, you think about why you've been here and what you've done, and I realize that that's the love that I have for my parents and the love they have for me that I've seen in this action where they saw their firstborn almost die or almost become vegetative. And then like now they're seeing my recovery and seeing me in this like with this new perspective on life and just seeing the love they have. Like I want that too. I want to have kids that I can love the same way that I feel them loving me. So that's been a surprising and neat thing too.
Thank you so much, Cody, for making out time to be with us in the studio. And I'm gonna take two more questions and we'll out of the studio. Now, first, I'm gonna ask you in summary, what message will you leave for those who probably might be passing through their own broken moment? What message will you leave for them?
So it's hard to say one message to envelop everyone because I know everyone has their own difficulties and trauma that I haven't experienced and don't know anything about. So excuse me if this is generic and all, but I think trauma and emotions, and they're most of the time they're things that you experience for a certain amount of time, and your brain. Sometimes some things are temporary, but I know other things are permanent. But your brain does a. We're bad at predicting how we're going to feel later in things because we only know our current situation. But we are actually very good at adapting to our problems. So even when I was in the early stages and like fearful of what my life was going to look like, I see now that my life has changed, but I'm actually liking my life now. And I realize your brain does a good job of adapting to how your life changes. So keep going, even if you can't see where you want to be and what you're going to feel like when you get there, because your brain will be able to adapt to your situation and you can make good of any life or any types of changes. And you can learn, you can take these opportunities of bad things to learn. And at the very least, you can share what you've learned with other people, and that can give you purpose. And really having purpose keeps people going through trauma. So keep going, even if you can't see the end.
I like that. Keep going even when you don't see the end. That's interesting. So, Cody, before you leave the studio, I'm going to ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear broken, not shattered, and how does that resonate with you?
I think when I think of shattered, I think scattered in so many pieces, to the point that it's overwhelming to try to pick them up. But broken, you're still whole. Like I'm still me, even if I'm broken. And so there is a possibility to still make something good of you. And so I think because we still have our pieces together, that we can make something good, even though we're broken. It's not forever and it's not permanent. And there's still us inside of I'm still me, so I can share love with everyone.
Interesting. Cody, that's very, very powerful. Cody, we have come to the end of, our studio session. But then before you leave the studio, there is a culture we have. The last guest will always, have a drop-off question for the next guest. And these questions are neither right or wrong, but that's just a culture that we have imbibed. And the last guest dropped off the question for you. He said, what advice would you give to a fashion designer that is trying to do one of the biggest fashion, one of the biggest fashion show ever that will make him stand out? And how can he give back to young designers?
This is tough because as my friends and family would tell you, I am the least fashionable person in the world. I have no fashion and no one would ever ask me any questions about fashion. Most of the time people are embarrassed, like, Cody, are you wearing that? So the only thing I think could come from me is I think it's important to lean into yourself and to not worry so much about judgment from other people. And a lot of times judgment from other people is because of things they don't understand or don't know. So don't let that deter you. I think just lean totally into yourself, and whatever you feel, even if it's abnormal, just go for it anyway.
Comedy is powerful. Honestly, you answered that right in as much as it is neither a wrong or right answer, but you got that so right. Kobe, to be honest, it is nice, sharing the studio with you today. It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you, and honestly, we're so excited. Thank you so much for stopping by to share the studio with us.
Absolutely, Obi. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure as well. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I really love your podcast, and I hope it really can help a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of the session. And also want to use this opportunity to thank our viewers once again for stopping by week in, week out to join us. And if you are joining us for the first time, please, this is Broken Not Shattered, where we tell our stories to bring healings to life. We're on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Spotify. Do well, and on Instagram as well. Please do well to follow us on all these platforms. Like, comment, and share with your loved ones. Kobe, we've come to the end of the show. And guys, don't forget, OBG is standing in for Ike. Stay tuned until next week. Bye for now. But in our last and famous word, we'll say love, peace, and more grace. Bye.